It's really hard to describe this experience because it's in dimensions that I don't think they exist on Earth, colors that for sure don't exist, and a unity and harmony in music that is completely unheard of on the Earth.
Well, I'm thinking of Apostle Paul, who had an experience being caught up into heaven, and he says, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it entered into the heart or the mind of man the amazing, incredible, wonderful things that await us." And so, yeah, how do you describe a color to someone who's blind? And in a sense, those of us here locked in space and time are blind relative to what you saw.
Right.
What surrounded this city? You mentioned some beautiful mountains and grass and flowers, and tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm not a real feminine person. I'm not really good with talking about flowers and stuff like that. I grew up in kind of a macho family, but at the same time, this all happened. And I must say that I have learned to write, but without the help of Ken Geyer, without the help of Jeff Braun, Kyle Duncan at Bethany, you wouldn't be holding that what we think almost as a, you know, it's a work of the Lord. Praise God. But there were mountains I can describe very easily, because these mountains didn't remind me of anything different than the most beautiful mountains that I saw in Switzerland, the Alps in Switzerland. Snow-covered mountains that were not mountains you wanted to conquer, but ones you wanted to revere. And they were in the distance, quite a ways in the distance, and everything was happening quickly. But of course, my heart was memorizing what I was seeing and experiencing, and it had been burned in my heart like a computer chip. If you and I had been installed with this computer chip inside of us, I guess we could talk about something like that. But this memory didn't come through my mind; it came into my heart immediately as I woke up from the hospital. But it has taken a while to be able to articulate it a little bit.
Yeah. You were quite fascinated with the grass and the flowers. And as I said yesterday, when I was reading what you described there, I was thinking about C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce. He describes it almost the same way you do. And he has this dream of heaven. I really wonder if he maybe didn't have an experience like yours, and like you decided not to tell about it in direct terms. Nevertheless, it was pristine and beautiful.
Jim, I grew up playing golf. My family was a golfing family, and I loved grass. I also must say that I have not read other heaven books. My wife has, but I have not read them. Many people say, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't you want to learn about someone else's experience? But I have been, I've been adverse to trying to hear about anybody else's experience, especially by writing mine. Mine had been permanently embedded in me, and I didn't want anything to taint that. So I would not read. That's why I have not read.
Well, now you can. You've written it, so now you can.
Yeah, now maybe I can. I'm careful to protect even my memory of these experiences. But yeah, the grass was breathtaking. The green, I'm not the same today. When I see a certain green, it like just grabs me and shakes me. And I love certain colors of green, and there's no particular one color of green, because it's like a peacock, I guess. If you're looking at a peacock with his feathers tucked in, and you look and you think, well, that's a pretty nice looking peacock, and then all of a sudden it spreads its feather, and you realize all of the dimensions of that little bird. Maybe a lousy illustration, but each color had all of these dimensions that were basically, and still are, indescribable. I'm not one on music. I don't have a natural, I'm not gifted in music, I don't have any really training in music, and I have never been the same. I love music, but only certain kinds of music. And when I hear music, I hear it more than with my ears. I hear it with my heart.
As you approach the city, this city that was shining with a kind of theologians would call it preternatural light, but it was lit by an unusual light. You saw walls. Describe the walls of the city.
The wall was pretty spectacular. I'd never seen a wall or never thought about a wall like this before, nor had I ever remembered hearing about heaven as a kid. I was not one that, maybe your family would be different, but I did not grow up in a ministry family. We were business people, Mormons on one side and Christians on the other. And so I just didn't have any experience or heard of, I don't remember hearing a sermon on heaven ever. So I had no preconceived concept of what to expect, but when I saw this wall, I noticed the wall was hugely thick, and it was translucent stones. It was made of stones that you could see through, and the light was coming from that same source that I had seen at the distance. And I try to use aviation distances because I kind of think that way, but I'm guessing that when I first saw the light and got close to the city, it was about 40 to 50 miles away. But now that I'm near the wall, it's about half that distance, I'm guessing, roughly, using US miles, I'm sorry. But the wall was made of 3 outer layers of walls. It was literally stair-stepping up to the center top wall and then stair-stepping back. And it was about as thick as it was tall, around 200 feet, maybe a little more. So it was a very, very thick wall, and it was greenish in color, clearly, with little hints of blue and black, but primarily a green wall. But through the base of the wall especially, you could see this extremely powerful light that illuminated through the stones, and almost every color of the rainbow would be represented, especially in the bottom.
You mentioned extremely powerful light. In the book you say it was a really bright light, but you didn't have to squint.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Yeah. I mean, I can't understand how light can do that. Yeah. I don't know how my eyes can do what it did. It's completely unscientific and illogical, but yet that's the story burned into my heart. For 38 years, we finally put it in print for family only. 2 years after that, it was put into this book. That's just, well, one thing you can say is ask those closest to me, have I been impacted by this event? And even my wife who knows me, knows all of my faults, and there are many, but she knows that I've been completely turned upside down by this, and it's affected her too. And finally, I was able to tell her, and that was really helpful because I felt like I was carrying a burden.
Well, I was thinking as I was reading the book, and you're holding on to this. You told your grandfather, but that was it. All of those years, it must have been a great relief for you. In fact, your wife at the end of the book, she talks about how this book came to be. And she says it just spilled out of you. You went on and on and on, and she's writing furiously, trying to capture some of it. Right. But it must have been a great relief to finally tell the story.
Yeah, in the early part of our marriage, I thought I was living such a great life that she could tell that I had seen heaven. I was quite certain in my young state that I was a great reflection of what I had seen, heard, and learned while in heaven. But in reality, my wife was only suspect and never was sure.
Yeah.